We have 13 weeks of pure excitement, pure learning, pure sharing, doing business together, bonding.
Idea extraction is your bedrock to building a profitable business.
Your business has a value, you have worth, and you need to be able to set your price. No matter how great the product is, it has to be marketed. If you have the cure for cancer tomorrow and you don't market it, no lives will be saved. Think about the challenges that we have and why your product or service is going to fill that.
You are the brand. We have to find our own unique value proposition.
At the end of the day, business is about money. And the big question you're always going to get, who is going to pay for this and how much money is it going to actually produce?
The only thing that you need to do is not give up.
This is going to be an exciting ride, ladies. Everyone, to the BBPA's Boss Woman program. Week 2, we are proudly sponsored and partnered with the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. And I thank them for their kind, generous support. This is what's enabled this second cohort to exist. So Uju, can you play the video for me? And then I will go into. So you're going to screen share yours, Uju?
Oh, okay. You broke up for a second. I couldn't hear you.
Oh yeah, can you share the video, please?
Okay. Ooh. Can you see my screen?
No.
That's weird.
Hi, Stacy.
Oh, my screen is not showing.
I'm not at a perfect spot where mine can be. That's why I wanted your screen to lead. No?
Right now, not sharing, no.
Okay, I'll see if I can. I'll do mine. Ooh. Okay, I'll see if I can. I'll see if I can do mine.
Okay.
Yours is not able to share?
Mm-mm.
Oh, can you give me a screen sharing access, please? Yep. I'm not able to share either, Uju. Yep, there we go. See, I'm not at a spot with great internet. That's the challenge. Everyone, today was my office hours day at the BBPA, so that's what I did. So Uju, you're not able to share your screen at all? Because I don't have great internet where I am.
Can you hear me? Just go ahead to the next item on the agenda, and then we can play it afterwards.
Yeah, but you can, if you can still do the share, because they'll need to see Wendy's slides as well. Wendy's slides. So today is week 2. What is the plan, the entrepreneur's roadmap? And I believe that the business plan is one of the cornerstones of your roadmap, because it tells you where you're going. And at moments when you feel like challenged and you feel like giving up and you feel like your course needs to be corrected, you go back to the business plan. As you grow your business at any stage, whether you're a startup, you are scaling up, you still need a business plan. I my company has been going for 20 years, and every year over Christmas, over the holidays, I work on my business plan to look for what innovative strategies I can implement. What is the plan I set out last year? Is that still relevant? Where do I want to go for growth? Who do I need to connect with? Have I met the goals that we set out? And then what is the next? So it's really important. The business plan is a very strong, solid foundation. Quality is the best business plan, says Steve Jobs, because as you build your business, and we talked about the candle company last week, and we have the hot sauce and all the different hair products. Quality is an important part of your business plan, because when you have a great quality product, people will come back to it. But having a great quality product is one thing, but the next is, how do you tell that to everybody? I've seen businesses with products that's not the best, but because they have a solid plan and they're intentional, those businesses take off and they thrive. And so a well-crafted business plan is the next best thing. It's always the best thing. And I wouldn't say just not the next best thing, it is the best thing. So tonight we have a dynamic speaker who's going to talk to you about the business plan. We have Professor Wendy Souquier from the Ryerson Diversity Institute. She's also an ally, a champion, and a friend. She really supports the work that we do, and BBPA has done a lot of collaboration with Dr. Souquier, who's just a pillar in not just in our community, but in terms of supporting women's entrepreneurship. The research work that she does at the Ryerson Diversity Institute is quite remarkable, and we thank her for her support and for being here, always ready to answer questions and is here to support. So I'd like to introduce you to one of our partners and tonight's speaker, Dr. Wendy Souquier. Can you hear the claps, Wendy?
Oh, you're muted, Wendy.
I am so uncool. I just figured out what that was all about, like in the last week. I thought they were losing their minds. So anyways, thank you very much for such a warm welcome. I will share my screen, and what I was asked to do was kind of walk through the business plan process. I'm really glad to hear that you're getting some in-depth support on financing, because just a little bit about my background. I've taught for a long time. I'm a professor in entrepreneurship, but I've done a lot of work with Ryerson has a whole series of incubators and accelerators. And so I've been a judge on lots of pitch competitions. I've worked with startups. One of the ones, I can't take credit for this, but I will anyways, that I was chair of the board for till about 2016, has just got $30 million investment in the tech sector, however. So, that's where there's often big money won and lost. But all I can say is that one of the things that we have, well, there are a couple of things we observe with women-led businesses in particular, is often there is inadequate attention paid to the money. And as Nadine said, I think quite clearly, if there's no money, and this is even if you're a social enterprise, but at the end of the day, if there's no money, there's no enterprise. And so being very intentional and clear about who is going to pay the money for what it is that you are trying to do, being very clear about how that money is going to cover your costs and allow you to grow and do the things you need to do to invest in and so on to sustain your business. The issues around the money are often the thing that women don't pay enough attention to and are absolutely fundamental. Like it's great to have a really good idea for a new product or service, but you really have to be very precise about who's going to pay for it, what are they going to pay, how many of them are going to pay up. You know, we always talk about the idea of addressable market. Like, it's one thing to say, you know, there are 10 million, my market is, you know, 15 million or 10 million women over the age of 16 in Canada. But, you know, to get to the point where you can actually say my addressable market is 55 women in my neighborhood, there's often a really big gap between what the potential market is and the number of people that you can actually reasonably reach and get money from. And so I hope that with, you know, with the speakers you're having who are doing deep dives into the financing, you're going to get lots of insight into how to make those calculations. And we all recognize that sometimes you expect that you're going to move more quickly. Sometimes, you know, we've seen with COVID, companies that, for example, went online found that they could dramatically increase their market coverage in ways they hadn't planned. You know, some people have said that they accelerated their business plan by months, if not years, because they were forced to go online, and that opened up lots of new market opportunities. But you need the precision of thought around who is going to pay for it, how much are they going to pay, how many of them are there, and what's it going to cost you to actually deliver. And it's, you know, it's something that women are often not sufficiently attentive to. And I use the example sometimes of fundraising at the university. So we have all these student clubs, and the student clubs raise money. And this is very sexist and very old school. But what did the women do to raise money? The women would organize bake sales, raise money. The guys would organize lotteries, or probably illegally, or you know, garage sales or whatever. The women would organize bake sales. I would go to the bake sales, and I wish I had a cookie. I don't have a cookie. I have these because I eat too many cookies. So I would pick up a cookie that they were selling for, you know, $1. And I would say, how much did this cookie cost you to make? And they would say, oh, well, you know, it didn't cost me anything. It was a little flour and a little raisins and, you know, some thyme, some eggs. And I don't make cookies, as you can tell, so I don't know what goes in the cookies. And I would say, but what about your time? How many hours did you spend to make these cookies? And what came out almost every single time is they were not making money on the cookies. They would have been far better to just write a check to the student club for $15 and be done with it, because they were losing money making the cookies. All they were doing was providing their labor and their product to make the cookies, and they were not making enough money to cover those costs. And that notion of not just your direct costs, you know, like, oh, this dress or this crock pot full of, you know, magic potion to make me look young again, only costs this much. You have to also factor in your time and what you could be doing with that time were you not cooking, sewing, programming, or whatever, if that makes sense. So even if you're prepared to invest a lot of your own personal money, a lot of your own sweat equity, you want to be super clear on what that costs. You want to be sure that you're assigning a value to your time, because women very often don't. And this whole notion of not just your direct costs, but also your opportunity costs is critically important when you're trying to make decisions about you know, how much time to invest in your business, or whether it makes sense to hire subcontractors or employees and so on. Does that make sense? I think it's, you know, the drives me crazy, the bake sale. And I'm sure at churches, this happens too, where, you know, people bake the cookies and the cakes and they take them to raise money for the local church. And I look at it and I said, write them a check. Like, you would be further ahead if you wrote a check. Unless you happen to, you know, love baking, then it's a different cost benefit. So that's just my that's Wendy's view on financing. And what I wanted to do now was dive in a bit on the business plan. And I'm going to try to share my screen, which is always a big risk. Can we see my screen? Can people see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
So now I will turn it to the slideshow. And what I want to do is walk you through what we recommend. Now, and Nadine, help me understand where we are in this process. So has anybody been walked through business planning prior to tonight? Or are we starting from scratch here?
We're starting from scratch, Wendy. They had gone through, there's a lot of women here from the first group.
Okay.
We had gone through the business plan then, but it was very rushed. Yeah, so that's
okay. Okay, so I will, after this session, provide you with links to a bunch of resources, because there are some outstanding organizations that have toolkits, that have guidelines, that have webinars and all kinds of things to help people walk through a full business plan. And a full business plan is substantial. I mean, we run courses where people develop a full business plan, and it's like, 50 pages with financial projections and all kinds of other details. And depending on who it is that you're pitching your business to, some may be happy with kind of what I would call business plan light, which is at a very high level, but some are going to want to see those detailed financial projections, your staffing plans, your operational plans, your implementation plans, and so on. And I'm happy for anybody who wants more support in doing a much deeper dive in, how do you do market research, and how do you develop estimates of, addressable markets and so on. I think that that's worth looking at if you have an audience for that. But what we're going to talk about tonight is kind of the first cut at a business plan using a model canvas. And so rather than the 50 pages or the 40 pages or the even more pages that sometimes you would have to prepare if you were applying for certain kinds of grants or funding or whatever, there can be, this is kind of a first crack at how you present your business, maybe as little as one page, in a way that really addresses the key issues that people are going to want to ask you. So think of this as your written pitch in some ways. These are the key elements of your elevator pitch, but written down in a simple form on a business canvas. And if we were in a room together, I'd have worksheets that I'd hand out to you, and you would work on them, and then you would show them to each other, and then you would show them to me. We've had to kind of adapt our approach to the online environment. But as I said the last time, not only does the BPPA have a lot of one-on-one supports available for women entrepreneurs as they're working through these processes, but the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub also has things like the Ask Give platform and other workshops and supports where you can get more advice on how to do a deeper dive into these things. So you know, as Nadine said, a business model is really the kind of overall perspective on how an organization is going to create, deliver, and capture value. And the business model canvas, as I said, is kind of a one-page way in which you can put all of your aspects of your business into one very concise, simple, simple form, where you look at, you know, who your partners are, what your key activities are, what your value proposition is, what your customer relationships are, your customer segments, the resources that you have, the resources that you need, the channels that you're going to use to distribute your product or services, and then finally, and most importantly, the cost structure and the revenue stream. What is it going to cost you, and how are you going to bring in money to cover it? So when we think about the kinds of things that we would particularly look at if we were developing, for example, a business model for the iPod, iTunes products, we'd be looking, our key partners would be our record companies and original equipment manufacturers. Our key activities, if you think about the process that you're going to have to go through to develop the business, would be, you know, the hardware design, the marketing, the branding, the HR, contracts and agreements, the IP registration, and so on. If we think about the value proposition, this you know, the way in which it's described here, and this is your value proposition should be short and concise. And I know from the our competition at the end of the last Boss Women event, people had lots of experience in coming up with that concise statement about what your value proposition is. But if you think about the iPod, it's a seamless music experience. If we look at our value to customers, the Apple has this weird relationship with its customers. It's almost an emotional, like Apple users don't pick devices based on functionality. They pick them because they love the brand so much. And one of the other dirty secrets with Apple, of course, is the fact that they kind of like narcotics, they hook you, and it's very hard to break the relationship because it's very difficult to switch. Like if you're an Apple user, it's not easy to switch to one of the other technologies or products or services. If you think about how you're going to reach customers, there are different distribution mechanisms: retail stores, Applecom. If you think about how you're going to define your market, if you're Apple and selling the iPod, it really is a mass market. You're going for very big numbers. If you think about the costs, you're going to have costs associated with people, you're going to have costs associated with manufacturing, you're going to have costs associated with sales and marketing. And if you think about your revenues, you're going to get revenues through your network of stores. You're going to get revenues through the hardware, and you're going to get some revenues through the software. So those are kind of the basic components of what a business model looks like at the starting point, and the pieces that you really have to work through when you're thinking about what your business is going to be. I'll pause there for a moment in case there are any questions, and you can put questions in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and speak if you like. Any questions at this stage?
Yes.
Hello?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello?
Oh, go ahead. Somebody else was speaking. I'll put myself on mute. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So my name is Jian. Earlier you had mentioned a concept, and I just wanted to know if you can touch a little bit on that, is the opportunity cost.
Oh, sure. Happy to.
Thank you.
So opportunity cost is, what's a good way to explain it? Opportunity cost is the cost of the costs that you are incurring that may not be direct costs. So I'll give you a good example. People think about going back to school, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I have a family of crazy dogs, and it's very possible they're all going to go crazy, and I'm going to have to run away and so I'll give you an example. So let's say I'm going to return to school and I'm going to do an MBA. Okay. And let's say institution A costs $15,000 a year for 2 years. Institution B costs $50,000 a year for 1 year. Okay. So one's $50,000, one's $30,000. Would say, well, let's go with the $15,000 one. But the fact is, if you're doing an MBA that takes 2 years and it's full time, foregoing 2 years of salary, which is way more than the cost. So the opportunity cost of doing the $15,000 MBA is that you're foregoing 2 years of salary, which could be $100,000 or $200,000, depending on what your job is. In contrast, the $50,000 MBA, you're only incurring the opportunity cost of 1 year missing work, right? So the opportunity cost for the 1 year MBA is $50,000 or $100,000, depending on how much you earn. So the actual cost, the price of the MBA is kind of irrelevant if you take into account the opportunity costs. And where this comes in when you're doing your small business is if Nadine, for example, decided that she was going to make PPE, she was going to make masks, right? So Nadine decided she was going to make masks and sell the masks because she was a good designer. If we looked at what Nadine can earn doing her brand EQ work, right? And the money that she would be giving up from her consulting business to make the PPEs compared to hiring someone at $15 an hour to make the PPEs. If you take into account the opportunity, if you look at the costs, it would cost $0 for Nadine to make the PPE masks, right? And it would cost $15 an hour for her to hire someone. But if she takes into account the opportunity costs and what she's going to be giving up in terms of her earning capacity for her consulting firm by making the masks, she's saving $15 an hour, but she's spending hundreds. The opportunity cost is the hundreds of dollars that she's spending effectively by not doing the other work. Does that help? So it's really about
Yes.
your time.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
right? And those people who are selling the cookies, they should have just walked down to Loblaws and spent $5 on a box of cookies instead of spending, you know, the time shopping, the time making them, the time waiting for them to be baked. And a lot of times women undervalue their time and don't factor it in when they're looking at what their business is really costing. Now, this isn't to say that if you have a great business idea and you want to quit your job and you really want to throw yourself into building the business, that you shouldn't. It's just you need to always be aware of what the alternatives are. And sometimes people, and I would say, you know, I'm the worst offender because I work as a consultant sometimes as well. I'll do things myself that it would make way more sense for me to outsource to someone else who's going to earn, you know, a fraction of what I earn. And it's better for me to pay that money to get that person to do the work than to be spending my time doing things that are not adding value. And a lot of times women's businesses don't grow as quickly as they could because they're too preoccupied with, you know, I can do that and I can do that and I can do that. And oh, I can make these PPEs myself, right? As opposed to, you know, from a purely economic dollars and cents perspective, does it make sense for you to be spending your time doing these things if you could get someone else to do them and spend your time doing something that's worth more? It's one of the big problems with women who own businesses, and you know, I would say I'm one of the worst offenders. They spend too much time in their business, not enough time on their business. And what I mean by that is they spend too much time in the weeds on the delivery and not enough time on the strategy, on the relationship building, on the other things that would actually grow the business. Does that make sense? Okay. So moving along then, when we think about how to move this lean canvas forward, and I know that I can't give you homework and mark your papers next week, but I'd really encourage you, we'll distribute this, and I'd really encourage you to you know, do your own lean canvas and actually write down the answers to these questions. So when you think about who are the partners you need to grow your business, and this is a company that I'm the chair of the board. And it's a social enterprise. What they do is they build greenhouses in Nunavut to provide more affordable produce and also to provide educational opportunities for people in the far north to learn about agriculture, because there are lots of people who live in Nunavut who have never seen you know, a green plant before. They don't know how plants grow. It's just not part of their environment. So Green Igloo builds greenhouses in the Arctic. So what partners does Green Igloo need? Well, Green Igloo is a social enterprise. It's funded primarily through government. It needs community members in the communities that it's working in to buy into the notion. It then needs like greenhouse technicians. It needs people in Toronto to kind of oversee the operations and the financing, and it requires people who are gonna donate. What does the company do? Well, Green Igloo builds greenhouses, it tackles food insecurity, and it teaches horticulture. What value is it adding for the customers? Growing fresh food for them locally, providing more control over food in the far north, offering education opportunities in the communities it works in, as well as employment and jobs. How is it going to keep in touch with customers and reach them? Well, it uses Facebook, produces quarterly reports, and social media. Who are the customers for Green Igloo? And this is interesting because the customers for Green Igloo are not just the people that Green Igloo is serving, because it is a charity. Its customers also include the foundations and government and so on who provide the funding. What are some of the channels that they're using to access their customers? Well, they do a lot of in-person stuff and travel up to the north. They do things online and they use social media. How did they set up the costs? Well, Green Igloo's costs include the team operations, the space, the salaries. They've given up their offices recently, the materials that they need to build the greenhouses, the costs of travel, etc. And in this particular instance, because it is a social enterprise, the principal sources of funding are not selling products, although they do sell some products, and they do have some northern communities that enter into contracts with them to build the greenhouses. But a lot of the money that they get is through grants, foundations, and donations. So that's another more small scale example in the social enterprise space of how you would use this. Nadine, I'm going to pause there for a second. And if you look at the categories in the Lean Canvas, do you want to just touch on the issues that you've already covered in the classes and the ones that are going to come?
Last week was the first week, so we haven't touched on any of these yet. These are all to come.
Okay. So that's helpful. Thanks. Then I'll spend a bit more time digging in. But I'll pause again to see in terms of questions. So let's just stop for a moment, and I'm gonna ask you, and I have to juggle a little bit because it's hard to see people and to it's hard to see people and also use my use the slides. Okay, there you are again. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a moment and let's just walk through these quickly. So who can I pick on? Debbie Innes. And if you were to look at this, can you walk us through your business and just fill in some of these boxes? You're muted.
Hi, sorry about that. Okay, now I'm all nervous. Should I tell you what the business is first?
Well, let's go through it. So let's go through what value are you adding to your customers? I guess that's where you would talk about your value proposition or what the business is. So let's start here in the middle.
Okay, so I'm a copy editor.
Okay.
So the value that I bring is that I guess overall I would save embarrassment for my customer, because I'm catching typos and grammar issues and consistency issues. You know, a certain word is spelled a certain way here, but down here it's spelled differently, or even a concept is explained one way and then it's explained a different way. So that is the value that I add.
So if we were going to reframe that, I hope you don't feel I'm picking on you. You smile a lot, so I think you could take it. But the way I might reframe that, what value are you adding to your customers? We're providing excellence in written communications. You know, I would say that you want to come up with quite a concise, pithy explanation of what you're doing for them. And then when we look at what does your company do, which is the key activities, that's where you might say you know, editing, outreach, proofreading, whatever the things are that you do. But what I'd encourage you to do is really think about what is the value that you're bringing to your customers. So improving communications to, you know, increase their the impact of their marketing and avoid embarrassment if you think the embarrassment is a piece of it. But just, you know, you probably want to refine that. If you think about the key resources that you need in order to operate, how would you describe those?
The key reason, you mean like my laptop?
It's your laptop, it's
Me?
your time,
My
right?
time, it's my knowledge. It's,
And is it just you? Are you a solopreneur?
yes.
Okay. Okay, good. Which entities, people do you need? So backing up another step, like who are the partners or the suppliers or the folks that will help make you successful?
Who would help make me successful? I don't know how to answer that.
How do you find your customers?
Oh, so I'm a member of the Editors Canada. It's the Editors Association, and they have a membership database, so people can find me in that directory.
So that's good. So that's one of your partners. Is that part of your strategy, right?
Right. And a lot of it is referrals. So because I know other members of the association, and some are neighbor, you know, some live close by, and so we keep in touch. It's referrals.
Okay. So when we talk about how do you access your customers, it's mostly in-person referrals, person-to-person referrals. Do you do any online stuff?
Not yet, other than being in directories that I can be found
Okay.
online. Oh, and I have a website. Sorry, I have a website, but I haven't promoted it yet. That's why I've joined this group, because I don't have a strategy. I don't have a strategy yet and a business plan, and I don't want to just wing it. I have ideas of what to post, some ideas, and I have some images, etc. But I don't want to just like go and start doing that quite yet.
Okay. And who are your customers?
They are book publishers. They are art galleries. Sorry, authors. Just some companies that you know, need content, need their content looked at before they put it online.
Okay. No,
so
that's good.
Legal organizations.
What does it cost you to operate your business?
I really don't know.
Well, do you work from home?
Yes.
So
yes.
you must have to have space, right?
Yes.
Which would be part of what you do. You must pay a little bit at least for your social media and your website and your memberships, right?
Yeah, my website, social media, no, but website, yes. And yeah, I have a couple of accounts, yes.
Okay. And then of course there's the issue of your time. And while you're probably, you know, maybe you don't have a fixed salary yet because you're just sort of working freelance at this stage, you need to put a number in there that is what you think you should be earning as a salary if you were paying yourself. Right? Mm-hmm. This is not free. That's where the opportunity cost becomes really important. Even if you're not formally paying yourself a salary yet, you need to put in a placeholder for what, you know, what the CEO is supposed to earn. And then if, you know, you anticipate growing and having to hire subcontractors or whatever, that's where you get your budget. Okay, so now the hardest question. How will you make money and how much money will you make? Right? So do you have, are you able to think through or to project how many like, you know, what you've earned so far? Do you, and you can make an estimate of how much money you want, right, in order to make this viable. So to hit the target of how much money you want in order to cover your costs, pay yourself a good salary, cover your, you know, a portion of your accommodation and so on. How are you going to make that much money? How many customers do you need? Where are you going to get them, etc.? Can you talk us through what that looks like?
No, I no. I don't know. What am I trying to say here? I know how much I would want. I know how much I want to make a year annually, so that I don't have to have a second job.
Okay.
Because right now I do have a part-time job, though with COVID I'm not doing it. But so yeah, I know how much I would want to make, but I have no idea how many customers I would need to be able to do that. And part of the issue is the jobs are all, they vary, you know. So for a book, it's, you know, if it's a book, a nonfiction book, you know, maybe that's like that could be a month's worth of work. But if somebody just needs a few pages that they're going to be posting on their website,
Right.
that's like a weekend, you know.
Right. So what you need to do is come up with, so this is really helpful. So what you need to do is come up with, think about, so if I were to make enough money to hit my target, how many books, like what's the combination? I need 5 books. I need, and normally when you freelance, this is just a rule of thumb for folks. Normally when you freelance, you should be able to make what you want to earn in 2 to 3 days a week, because the rest of the time you're developing the business. So the typical rule of thumb for a consultant, for example, is if in your day job, you were going to earn $100,000 a year, just working full time. If you're worth $100,000 a year full time, as a consultant, you need to be able to make that much money in 2 to 3 days a week, which means you need to be able to make $100,000 in about 120 days. So that this is kind of easy math. What that means is you need to be earning close to $1,000 a day, generating close to $1,000 a day, offset all the time you're going to have to spend selling, et cetera, et cetera. I'm happy to walk through that again, but does everybody understand? If you move from a salary job to freelance, you have a lot of extra costs associated with developing the business. So you can't just take the salary that you would earn doing the job for somebody else, because you have all of this overhead and this extra work that you have to do in order to develop the business, find the clients, manage your invoicing, et cetera, right? So you have to be able to make the money that you want to make for yourself in 3 days a week max. So you have 2 days left to build the business. Is that clear to everybody?
Can I just ask, so you have to get there first, and it's the getting there that's the issue. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not there yet. I've had clients throughout COVID, but I haven't made that much money in a week. I might go like 3 weeks with no work, no client, and then suddenly I have something, and that work takes me a week. And it doesn't pay, you know, maybe it doesn't pay all that much. And yeah, and then I'm paying my rent and whatever. And so, yeah.
But my only point is, of course, you don't start at that point, but when you're trying to project where you need to get to make it a viable business
Oh, okay.
makes no sense unless you have, you know, family issues or you really just hate working for somebody else. If in your job you were making $30 an hour, you can't charge as a freelancer $30 an hour. Do you see my point? You have to charge more like $50 to $60 an hour in order for the business to
Okay. Yes.
and a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, well, you know, I'm currently working, I'm earning 20 bucks an hour, I'll go freelance and I'll earn 20 bucks an hour and I won't have to pay, you know, there won't be deductions and I'll pay my taxes in the end and all that. But it doesn't take into account the fact that when you're freelancing, there are ups and downs. And as you said, you can go for a week without pay. So if you're pricing yourself in the same way that you were as a salaried employee, you're going to lose out.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And the other thing that I've found is, because I don't have enough clients, is when you're waiting for the payment, you invoice them, but at some places they pay within 30 days and it's often just right as 30 days is coming up. So a lot of times during this time, I've been drumming my fingers waiting for a check to come or a payment to go into my bank. And it's crazy making, and it's part of me is like, I can't freelance. I can't live my life like this, waiting for a payment to come. And then if it doesn't, then you have to start chasing them. And yeah.
So here are a couple of things. First of all, everybody should have a business bank account, even if you're self-employed. It's really important early in the process to separate out your personal expenses from your business expenses. And it costs you a couple bucks a month or whatever, but you want to set up your business account in the bank separate from your personal account. You also want to make sure that you have a good relationship with your bank and that you have, you try to get, over time access to financing, because you need to have the flexibility to weather the ups and downs. And a really good strategy for people who are looking at starting out as freelancers is approaching more experienced freelancers and saying, who very often will reach a point where because the work goes like this, goes up and down, and very often experienced freelancers need to be able to subcontract to others because they have too much work to do in too short a period of time. So a really good way to get started, although you won't be able to charge as much as you would on your own, is build relationships with other freelancers, build collectives, build cooperatives, build alliances, so that you've got a source, excuse me, of funding coming in that way. But in terms of your actual business plan, you have to run the numbers. You have to be super clear on what level you're going to have to hit in order to be viable. Because the other thing I would say is women are often undercharged, and it's like the baking story, right? Where they're not charging enough money to cover their costs. And so if you look at what your workflow is going to be, and you're charging, I'm just making this up, but you're charging $400 for a book and it takes you a month's worth of work, like that is not a sustainable business. So you have to take a really hard, cold look at what amount of work are you going to have to do at the rate that you're getting paid in order to hit your revenue target. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things, like I said, there are lots of freelancers out there, but there are also things like TaskRabbit. There are different kinds of collectives that could fill in the gaps while you're trying to build your business, your serious business. There's probably other stuff you could do to fill in those gaps by building relationships with other editors. And that brings us back to which entities, people do you need? So in the startup phase, maybe that's what you need. You need some partners, you need some subcontracted work. You need to find out, you know, who are the people with high volumes of editing who might subcontract to you for a portion of the work. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's a great idea. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay,
Wendy, can I ask a question? This is Vanessa.
sure.
So I'm in the travel business and I've been in it for quite a few years, and quite a few as in like over 28 years. And I've been kind of like the third attempt to move out onto my own. Obviously, just when I started, COVID just happened and everybody knows what's going on with the travel business right now. But even before I made this attempt, one of the things that I found is that even within our business, when I work with a lot of independent agents, and what I find that quite a few of them have issues with is, as you're mentioning to Debbie, is charging a service fee for their services. Because in this business, when we are sitting there, especially if we're working on customized itineraries, not just something that's cookie cutter that, you know, we can just go and sit on our computers and within 5 minutes I'm sending you to a great sandals somewhere, right? I'm talking about the ones who we're sitting there and having to put together a whole trip through Europe. A lot of people have problems, and you're correct, a lot of women have problems charging service fees for the service, i.e. the issue that you just spoke about with the cookies and, you know, going, and I would have gone and purchased it in opposed to try to make it because I don't have that kind of time to waste. But this is, it's a big, it is you pay a fee to go to a lawyer. You can't hire a lawyer until you pay a retainer fee. You can't go to an accountant before you pay that accountant to do your taxes. So, you know, you have this ongoing thing that I don't understand why a lot of, and I do find being, I don't know, a fempreneur, I don't know what I'm calling myself just yet. The issue with valuing yourself to charge, you have to value your time. And I can't sit here for a week trying to send you to Europe to have a bombastic 50th celebration, and I get nothing out of it other than the commission that I'm charging, right? I work on a lot of weddings and I charge, my minimum fee starts at $500 just for under 20 people. So I'm just,
Yeah, and figuring,
I'm just saying.
yeah, no, and it's interesting because, you know, I've been consulting for a really long time, and figuring out where to set the price point is really tough. Travel industry, perfect example. Like, we don't use travel agents much anymore at Ryerson because there's, like, we used to have a cadre of fairly sophisticated travel agents who I think made a good buck on making the university travel. But now there's the competition with Expedia. So if you're doing like plain vanilla travel, even, you know, if it wasn't COVID, the margins just aren't going to be there. So what you know, in my view, what you need to do is really focus probably on those higher end experiences, because if you can focus on the higher end experiences and wrap together a really memorable combination of things that's different than you know, what I can get online at one of the you know, cookie cutter resorts, that's something people might pay for. But it requires a combination of valuing your own worth while you're being realistic, right?
Right, exactly.
Undervalue themselves, but sometimes they also are out of touch with reality. And so, you know, I've also seen people come in and want to charge, you know, just way more than I would view them as being worth. Once you've established a relationship with someone and shown what you can do,
and you have to look at, I mean, and you have to look at the amount of work you're putting into whatever it is that you're doing. I'm making the shift into offer, you know, Black History tours literally around the world, not just you know, so my market,
Brilliant.
I've been niching myself for quite a few years. And I mean, if anyone has ever done, if you've gotten married and you've tried to put your wedding together, much less here, much less trying to do it in a destination, I only focus on destination weddings. Those are way more difficult than trying to do things here, as an example. So you have to know, you're right. So I'm in complete agreement, but you did catch me with one thing I wanted to say was that if you are actually working somewhere and you're getting paid $30 an hour, you can't come out and charge $30 an hour. I thought, oh my God, a bell just went off, right? You gotta,
No, it's
right. You gotta put your market up. You gotta mark yourself up. Yeah.
You have to. You have to because you're not likely to be working 40 hours a week, right? You're likely to be working 20 hours one week for pay and 100 hours the next week.
That's right.
You can't run a business without investing time in the business. And so you have to make sure that you're building those costs in, or you're just going to end up nowhere. And I'll tell you what I think is a funny story. So someone approached, you know, I've been a consultant for about 30 years, but I have a real job. So it's just a side gig, and I'm really busy. So I don't really need the money, and I don't really take on projects unless there's something, you know, kind of cool or interesting about it. And someone approached me, it's probably 2-3 years ago, with an idea that they wanted to start a private university in Toronto. And I was like, yeah, good luck with that, because the Liberal government was in power. And he was from another country. I won't mention it because, you know, it'll become obvious maybe who it was. Long story short, they ended up getting it. But when he first came to me and said, you've been recommended, and, you know, can you help us write this proposal? You know, my reaction was, this guy's like dreaming in Technicolor. I don't have time. I don't want to do it. And so I tripled my consulting rates. You know, I just said, I just named a number that was like way, way more than I ever would have normally charged if I'd wanted a job. But because I didn't want this job, I just threw out a crazy number, and he took it. So what I realized was, you know, figuring out how I hadn't raised my fees in probably 20 years. Like I was still charging. And when I did the math, I realized I was, you know, it's a kind of do what I say, not what I do. I was charging fees that were comparable to my salary. I wasn't charging fees that were commensurate with my value or with that formula that I proposed. But what I realized is one of the things that once you hit a certain point and you're really in demand, then you can start to play around with your pricing, because sometimes what you'll find is you can push your price up and you'll get less work, but overall you'll end up earning the same amount of money than if you kept your price low and did less work. Does that make sense? So that whole process of how you set your prices, often when you're just coming into the market, you're effectively trying to buy market share, you're trying to get the experience, you're trying to get the network of customers. I mean, I know people who have done projects for free just to get in the door at, you know, at some of their preferred customers, and they do a good job and then they start to make money. But working through these things in a very granular way that's the core of your business. You know, what's it going to cost you, and how are you going to make money, and how much is it going to cost you, and how much are you going to make? That's got to be your focus. It doesn't matter how good your idea is. Like I said, business is about the money. So let's think a bit about the value proposition and the customer piece of it. So here's another example, which is looking at how you define the value that you're providing to your customers. And it's not just a question of what the it is. It's also, how are you different from everybody else? So for example, you may be in the hair care business, but you're focusing on affordable hair care. You may be doing baked goods, but you're focusing on diet friendly or keto or something else. You may be in the training business, but what you're really focused on is upskilling, taking people from one point to another. And so being very specific about what your value proposition is and how you're different from others is going to be really, really important. And you know, again, then the question becomes, what does the company do? So if the value you're offering is affordable hair care, and what you're doing to provide affordable hair care is selling hair products, that's how you understand the difference between the value, which is to the customer, versus the activity that you're doing. So, you know, again, back to the earlier example, the activity was editing. The value to the customer was improved written communication or something. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's important to make sure that you're clear about that distinction. And so really what your value proposition is trying to do is communicate concisely and precisely what it is you're offering that's distinct. And what's distinct can be, you know, that it's new, that it's better, that it's customized. So if we think about the travel examples, the high degree of customization and sort of what we would call maybe luxury status is critical, versus, you know, low cost versus accessible versus convenient. So really think about what your value proposition is. And often in order to understand what your value proposition is, you have to actually do some research into what else is out there in the world. So if you want to be, you know, whether you want to be an editor or you want to be a travel agent, or you want to be a fashion designer, or you want to run a construction business, the starting point has got to be understanding the industry, understanding who's there, understanding the competition, understanding what other people charge, understanding how other people are positioned. If you're opening a new restaurant, you have to be really clear on where the competition is in the neighborhood, how you're going to get people in the door, and how you're going to distinguish yourself. So it's the value proposition really has to focus on how you are distinct in offering something that people will pay for. And so, you know, these are some of the questions that would guide your definition of the value proposition. What is the customer problem or need that you're trying to solve? What is the value that you're bringing to that customer? And what needs are you satisfying? So in order to define these things, you have to do some research. It's not just a matter of thinking, you know, oh, I've always liked to do hair. And so, you know, I'm going to set up a hairdresser. You need way more information before you decide what the thing is that you're going to be able to offer that is distinct and different from everybody else. And I'm just going to go on to the next one. So then the issue becomes, in order to figure out what the value proposition is, you have to have a really in-depth understanding of who the customer is. Who are you going to actually, whose needs are you actually going to serve? And you know what COVID has done in some ways is really forced us to rethink who the customer is and how we're going to reach them. So, for example, the affordable hair care products, pre-COVID, it might have been the retail salons, but maybe post-COVID, it's the retail salons and it's online using Shopify, right? So you have to be very precise as well about who the customer is. And so when we think about developing customer profiles, again, we need to do some research. We need to think about exactly who's going to use the product. You know, is it men? Is it women? Is it a certain age? Is it a certain occupation? How much are they going to be prepared to spend? What is it that they need that you're doing for them? And does everyone know what a persona is? Can anyone explain what a persona is?
You want me to do it, Wendy?
Sure.
I can speak on it.
No, there's another volunteer.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, the volunteer. You go ahead.
Thank you. The persona will be the ideal target audience / client of your business. What are their characteristics? How much money do they need to make for them to be able to afford your services? What type of lifestyle do they live? What would your ideal customer look like or be? I think that's the definition of a persona.
That's a really good example. What's your business?
Oh God, I am venturing into communications, consulting, primarily for small businesses. I would like to offer branding and communication strategies, and also government relations.
Okay, and so when you think about your customer, I think you're not focused on consumers. You're focused on organizations, right? Mm-hmm. So can you walk us through how you've thought about the customer profile of who you're going to be able to serve?
For sure. I've given it some thought. Small business owners is quite a broad term. You know, it's just like how they say the middle class income folks. It's very broad. So I've been thinking that I would place my ideal client to be at least a small business that makes about or more than $150,000 per year, and one that is very keen on thriving / moving forward to the next step and needs help with their branding or communications. And yeah, so that's kind of like my ideal client. As to the particular field of in the sector that they're into, I'm very open because I want to learn as much as I can. So yeah, that's what I have for now.
And did you previously work as a communications branding expert?
I am venturing into that. So I'm hoping that with the knowledge that I got through education at Simon Fraser and through my other works that I'll be doing with different agencies, then I'll be able to use those skills to help small businesses. Yeah, so I'll be working on my own while also sharing my knowledge.
Great. And do you need an editor? Because I just met one.
Yes, I would need one, but I'm also good with editing. And it's also good to know that there's someone else interested and very good with editing. So I'll keep Debbie in mind.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else want to take a crack at walking through who their customer is? Anybody who's got a consumer product and wants to talk about the person or the kind of people that they're going to satisfy?
Sure, it's Nettie.
Okay, go ahead.
So my product is a gourmet hot sauce. And the way I position it, or the way I see it positioned is, it's not going to be the hot sauce you'll find at the supermarket for $1.99 or $2.50, simply because of the way I make my hot sauce. So I see myself catering more to the people who shop at Whole Foods, Pusatari's, the the upper I don't want to sound snobbish, but that upper end of the market.
Nothing snobbish about that.
Because there's so many different cheaper versions of hot sauces in the supermarket, and believe you me, you get what you pay for. It's mostly salt and vinegar in those hot sauces. So the way I see my sauce, it's for the discerning palate, and not necessarily for the person who's cost conscious. So it's the same. It's the old adage: you get what you pay for. If you want a quality product, then Nettie's Not Joke is for you.
So how are you going to find those pallets apart from the distribution? How are you going to get to the people so they get to know your product and like it?
Well, that's where I'm going to need some help from the skilled marketers, Nadine and co. Word of mouth to a certain extent, but I know it's difficult. It will be very challenging to get into those businesses, because I'm sure they have very strict requirements as well. So I am definitely going to need some help cracking that market.
And have you thought about, sampling or restaurants or figure, like, are there kind of places where you could provide tasting opportunities to get people hooked?
That is part of my plan. I don't know what it, at this stage, I don't know what it would take for me to even get them to allow me into their doors. I am not quite there yet. Right now, most of my product is sold through word of mouth. I have one fairly upper scale client in Rosedale, and that was by word of mouth. But the other thing too, Wendy, is I still work full time, and work is very busy. So I have to be very careful that I don't go out too big too soon before I'm ready. Because I know if you mess up, or if I mess up, I probably won't get another chance. So I need help with all of that, timing it and rolling it out properly so it doesn't explode on me. Because I know one of the cardinal sins of small business is overtrading, and that can really put a spanner in the works. So that's the kind of thing I'm looking for help with, in launching properly. And yes, tastings would be helpful. I know that even at the level that I'm doing this little business on the side, when I go out in the summer months, mostly, I do provide my sauce for tasting, and I could see the difference. People walk by and I have the different flavors. I'll put it out with crackers and cheese or whatever, and it's like, next thing you know, oh, can I have 2 of those bottles? That's really good. So
yeah. So the other place for kind of higher end products are often things like farmers markets and specialized markets, as opposed to the grocery stores, as a starting point to build a bit of a customer base and so on. And of course, increasingly there's online options as well. I know I go to, I discovered ginger, I think it's pear and ginger chutney by Amazon, through Amazon. That's like $12 a bottle or something. I would never in a million years buy it when I was out shopping, but I will buy it through Amazon and give it as a gift or, a special treat for myself. So I think probably one of the things that you really need to do is sounds like you have an idea of the customer, but your issues are going to be distribution and how you can actually connect with them.
Yes.
And this isn't a, you know, I don't think the Apple example is necessarily the best, but just each one of you needs the discipline to go through and think about who it's going to be, who your ideal customer is going to be, because you need to know who that is in order to develop, you know, the channels and the access and so on. So then we come to the activities. So once you've defined what the value is you're bringing, you've identified who your customers are, you've created started to develop sort of personas for your customer, you have to really think about what the things are that make you different from everybody else and what the activities are that you're going to need in order to deliver on that value proposition. So the second sort of area, once you've kind of worked through the market, the second thing is going to be to look at the key activities. And just before I leave the part one, remember that, you know, you have a hot sauce. There are lots of other hot sauces. So you better be really clear on who your competition is. Who are you taking on in the marketplace? And I saw, there was a story about a girl who developed custom teas. Did people see that in I think it was in the Star and it was on CBC. A girl who was, she was a gymnast and she had an accident, and part of what she did to sort of keep herself busy was use kind of high-end teas and write about them on her blog. And then she decided to start making her own teas. And somehow she sent it into Oprah. I guess they accept samples to talk about on Oprah, and she made it through the door at Oprah, partly perhaps because of her story as well as her product. And, you know, the rest is history, right? So sometimes you get a big break that opens up markets very, very quickly. But for most people, it's just a slog. It's, you know, one community fair, farmer's market at a time to kind of build that customer base. And in the current environment, as I said, online opens up huge opportunities, because then you can take a few satisfied customers and you can amplify their messages to get more. Your customers, if you have them, can become the ambassadors for the brand. You can develop, you know, communications and marketing strategies to get your customers to actually be your salespeople, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, but really being clear about what it is you're offering and how you're distinct from everyone else is super, super important. So then the next thing you want to think about is, okay, so I got this idea. I know what the value proposition is. I know who the customers potentially are. How am I actually going to develop the product? Who are the partners that I need, and what are the resources that I need in order to deliver? So when we look at the question of activities, what does your company do? You know, we talked about this before. Affordable hair care is the value to the customer. What you're doing is selling the hair products and so on. What are the resources that you need? Well, typically people need funding and or materials. If you're an editor, you just need funding. If you're making PPE masks, as Nadine is going to, you need materials as well. And then again, thinking through who you want as your partners. So when we think about the activities, there's a concept in business by a famous business theory guy called Michael Porter. That's the value chain. And all the value chain is it looks at where you start and where you end up. So you start with raw materials, you do something with the raw materials, and you get it to your customer. So you start to break down that process. How are you going to procure? Where are you going to get the materials that you need? That becomes very important if you're manufacturing hot sauce, or you're making PPEs, or you're building a new computer. You've got to know who your providers are going to be and where you're going to get your materials, right? You have to think about what the processes are in terms of translating those materials into products. So are you going to make your hot sauce in the kitchen? Are you going to outsource? Are you going to go to a community kitchen so you can do high volumes? Are you going to ask Janice Bartley at Foodpreneur to work with you to help take you through the process? Lots of different ways to think about your production issues. How are you going to get the product to market? We're going to talk about later, but really the fundamentals are, what are the raw materials you're going to use? How are you going to take those raw materials, turn them into something, and then how are you going to market them? And so then, of course, who you need to help you is also critically important. And, you know, again, like, a lot of this process is just about systematizing what you already know and putting a little more discipline on the process that you work through. So you probably already intuitively know that in order to be successful with your business, you need to make partners with, you know, the local retailers, or you need to figure out how to get in the grocery stores, or you need to get some champions, or you need to get some startup money, or whatever. But writing it down forces a kind of discipline and focus that I think is super important. So we've talked about how you define your product and your market, and how you define, again, the value proposition, which is the value to the customer, versus your activities. We've talked about the processes that you need to engage in order to produce the product, where you're going to get the raw materials, how you're going to, are you going to do all the work yourself? Are you going to get someone else to do some of it? Are you going to import? Lots of options there. And we've talked about the kinds of resources that you need, and making sure you're thinking about the resources as well as the partnerships. Now we need to think about, we've got our customers' needs defined. We think we've got something they want that adds value. How are we going to get to them, right? How are we going to get to them? And, you know, I'm again, the worst offender. So everybody says, oh, social media, we'll use social media. Well, social media is great, but you still need to have a network. You know, like, you can be posting all you want on Twitter. If you've got 3 followers, it's not going to get you anything. So social media is not sort of the panacea or the magic pill to solving these problems, because you still need to have people that you can actually connect to. And so, you know, there are lots of different ways in which you can stay in touch, but you do need to figure out, you know, let's see, who are the people who buy hot sauce? What are we going to eat the hot sauce with? Let's start with that. Who are we eating the hot sauce with? What other foods? Cheese and crackers, I think we said.
Everything from soup to nuts.
Soup to nuts. Okay, so maybe one of the things that we need to think about is maybe the best way, again, coming back to the partnership idea, maybe the best way to, at least in the early stages, to reach partners is to think about sampling, or is to partner with someone who sells cheese and crackers. And, you know, if they're running tasting, you know, wine tasting with cheese and crackers, add the hot sauce. Although I kind of think hot sauce at a wine tasting would probably kill your palate. So it It wouldn't work unless the wine was really bad, then that's maybe. But thinking through, like, how are you actually going to identify the people you want to connect with, first off, so prospective customers, and then new customers, prospective customers, and then also staying in touch with customers you've had, because you've heard the old adage that it's, you know, it costs you 20% to keep a customer costs 20% of what it costs to get a customer, right? So getting a new customer is an expensive proposition. Once you have a customer, if you keep them happy, then you are able to actually build. If you're constantly, and that's why customer loyalty is so important, because if you're constantly having to get new customers as opposed to being able to harvest the existing customers and get them to be repeat buyers like me, you know, I need a jar of pear and ginger chutney once a month to stay happy, because it's like having jam with meat. Who could complain? You have curry, you can have chutney. You have chicken, you can have chutney. I think chutney is kind of my version of hot sauce. You can eat it with anything. But it's much better, right? If I'm buying the same product over and over and over from somebody, because that produces a predictable revenue stream, than if, you know, somebody buys one jar, hates it, and never comes back again. So it's really important to maintain and cultivate those customer relationships. And increasingly, that's also a reason why, you know, online platforms are so useful, because someone buys something from you online, it's very easy to stay in touch with them. Whereas if you sell something in a store, you don't know who's buying it. And so maintaining those customer relationships becomes incredibly critical, because, you know, someone buys something and then you can email them and tell them, remind them to buy more stuff, and so on and so forth. Any questions or comments about this? Any of the aspiring communications people want to offer advice?
Wendy, you're just going to jump in here, especially because I'm just checking the time, and we have roughly 22 minutes, and we have a second speaker as well who's in the room.
Oh,
so
my apologies. That wasn't explained. I think, okay, I'm gonna wrap up. Thanks for telling me. I'm so sorry. I didn't know.
That's full.
No, I didn't know. Apologies. Very bad. I'm a professor. I talk too much. That's the way it goes. So, you know, you're going to dig more in this course into marketing. Think about activities that you're going to be able to engage in. And then, of course, you're going to learn, I guess, next week, more about revenue models and cost structure and budgets. And that's something that I think we've talked about quite a lot already, but the pricing becomes really important. How you set your prices, not that you can't change them, clearly you can, but the pricing will dictate your profits. If you set the prices too low, you'll lose money. If you set them too high, you'll lose money. So you've got to figure out what the optimal pricing strategy is, that's driven in part by your costs and then also by your aspirations. And so, you know, the budgets, very important. You'll learn more about that. So what I'm going to suggest is, big apologies for going over time. And what I'm going to suggest is that Nadine will send out the business planning templates. And I'd really encourage all of you to take a crack at trying to fill in those different boxes, and then come prepared to the discussion about finances So you've really got more specificity around who are your customers? How many of them are there? How are you going to make your money? I think if you have some of those ideas fleshed out, then the financing piece will make way more sense. So, apologies.
Wendy, great information. You know, I see the chat, and so everybody has to say that this was very valuable, very informative. This is key information that we need. We're going to literally look at those various quadrants, those squares, and fill them in. And I think the exercises with the women, the examples, was also great. So thank you very, very much. If you could share the presentation with us as well, maybe we could have that available for the women. But as we go through finance next week, and then it's the marketing in week 5, and all the other areas, a lot of this will come back and reference this. This is great information. Thank you very much, Wendy. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, and big apologies to the next speaker. I really didn't, it was in my agenda as a 2-hour block. So big apologies. And I hope you'll all stick around and give them the time they deserve.
That's great. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you very much.
And so just to, so we don't
Step.
This has been very impactful. My notes are like filled up, but now we have a second speaker, Billy Balogun. She's founder of Tribe Beauty Box. She's also a graduate of University of Toronto, and she's just going to share with us her story as an entrepreneur, the value of business planning to the success of her business. And really, I was reading about her, and she highlighted that what really makes her business stand out is she brings to her business her authentic self. And so we're going to be seeing a little bit of that today as she speaks to us about the success or the value that business planning brought to the success of her business. So please just welcome Billy Balogun.
Hi, Billy.
Hi, everyone. How's it going?
Great. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
So do I just kind of tell my story, or is this going to be a Q&A? I do have to leave in 15 minutes, unfortunately.
No worries, Billy. If you could tell your story, Billy and I were on a panel together. And when I heard her story, I thought, how remarkable, this young woman that has just done really well. And, you know, I thought your approach was to your business is just great. So yeah, just tell them your story.
Yeah. So I launched a Tribe Beauty Box. So this is actually my box. It's a pink box filled with beauty products. So Tribe Beauty Box is a bi-monthly subscription box. You get 5+ full-size products delivered to your house every 2 months. If you're into beauty, skincare, and you just want to discover new female-owned and indie brands, then it's the box for you. So I started the subscription box 2 weeks after I graduated from university. I was receiving some boxes while I was in university, but there was always something missing that I discovered. And I was trying to see if I was the only person who was also having that issue. So one thing I like to do is go through competitor reviews, especially when you're building your business. Like, the complaints that customers of your competitors put online is sort of like a gold mine. Sometimes you don't even have to do like market research, because everything you need to implement into your new brand to make it better than the present competitor is in those customer complaints. So I took weeks, so many months. I'm just studying complaints, writing them down, and I was able to map out 5 major complaints that people were expressing online. And that's actually what I use as the pillar for my business. So that's one thing I always advise people to do. Don't rush the process when you're building a business. It's once you launch, I feel like so many people rush to launch, but like once you launch, like it's there. It's better to take some time. Everything doesn't have to be perfect, but it's better to take some time, do your digging, do your market research, and launch from there. So I actually launched the business with just $300 as a startup investment. And how I did that, a lot of people don't understand that, but how I did that was I seriously bootstrapped it. So I actually only paid like $5 for my logo. There's an awesome website called Fiverr.com where you can find freelancers that are overseas. So a lot of the things that I needed done in regards to my website, my logo, my box design, maybe even research a virtual assistant, I used Fiverr. And then I used a great app called Kickoff Labs. So for me, I don't believe in launching a business without validating that the idea is something that people are interested in. I would never want to put in effort for so many months only to sort of like launch to crickets. So what I do with all of my businesses is that I validate the idea using a landing page. So you can build landing pages using any softwares that are out there. I specifically use an app called Kickoff Labs. It helps you basically like create a mock-up of what your website would look like, and it's just a one pager. You'll be able to tell people what your offering is, put in pictures of the product, and essentially collect interest. So you collect their name, their email, and nowadays SMS marketing is amazing. So maybe even their phone number. Of course, you need to get their permission to text them. So when you do that, you're essentially getting the potential buyers who went on that landing page and thought that your product was interested, gave their information, and when it's now time to launch, you can then launch to those people who gave you your email. So before launching, I told myself that I only wanted to I wanted to raise 1,500 emails. Keep in mind that 1 to 3% of people who give you their emails actually convert into buyers. And this is because you're a brand new business. There's most likely no reviews. People are kind of skeptical because you're just starting. So your conversion rates would be low. If it's anything higher than 3%, then you're doing an amazing job, and like your product is just stellar, and you've hit all the check marks. So I actually gave myself a month because of my budget, of course. Kickoff Labs, I believe at the time, cost $75 of the month. So that did take like quite a bit of my budget. So I gave myself a month, 1,500 emails, and actually in 3 weeks, I was able to gather 2,300 emails. This was around November 2017. That's when I launched my business, and I was supposed to launch December 5th. And then I woke up literally like on Black Friday of that day. And I'm like, why am I not launching on like the biggest sales day of the year? I already have the email. I already have my name out there. I've already, made my mark. Why not launch? So I actually built my website that same day on Black Friday, got everything ready and launched. And I was actually able to get over 100 sales on my first day just because I did that back end work of validating the idea, getting people that were interested, obviously ship the product. So when I got the sale, so I did it as a pre-sale. I got the money, got the sales, then I paid my vendor. And ship the products to my customers. So that's how I was able to bootstrap all the way to now, where I'm over $900,000 US in revenue and about to hit the $1 million mark. So this is how I built my business. Of course, there's so much in between that I can't. Thank you. That I can't. Yeah. Okay. Everyone's on mute. That I can't like put in like 15 minutes, but that's the launch, and that's the most important. And you build your business, you build loyalty. When you start, don't dump your money into like Facebook ads. I started running Facebook ads when I was way past the $500,000 revenue goal. I started running ads last year, Q4. Before that, I focused on loyalty. So I just have this thought that if I have 100 customers, and if let's say 80% of them are happy, if each of them refer a friend, then I double my numbers. So I really focused on making my customers happy. And I did that through community building. I have a private Facebook group for my business where I give my customers exclusive insights. I talk to them. I go on Facebook Live. We play with my products together. I do giveaways. I do contests. I share interesting. I even share like funny videos, funny memes. Just like I just put myself as I would talk to my friends on there, so they know that I'm a human being. It's more than just like me trying to sell them stuff. So I actually still have some of my customers who purchased from me on that first day, who are still my customers today. And this month, actually next week on the 24th, is going to be my 3rd anniversary. So that just shows the importance of community building and making sure that your customers remember you as someone who's just not for the product. Of course, you're allowed to, be behind the scenes. If you don't want to put your face on the brand, that's totally you. That's a different vertical, but I built my business by putting my face out there. So loyalty is the first thing I focused on. Then I focus on SEO. Whatever industry you're in, you want to build your website to have keywords like best, most, whatever, like those keywords that people use to search on Google. Think about how you search for things. Like, say I'm looking for, I don't know, baby bibs. I'll search best baby bibs. So you should put your product descriptions, your keywords, the title of your website, and all those things to actually follow what someone would search. So when you actually look up my website, it says premium best quality makeup. That way, the more people that go on my website, the more Google ranks my business for those keywords. And eventually, hopefully someday, when someone searches best makeup subscription, my website will be number 1. So if you're especially in a niche industry, you want to do that. You want to implement that. That way you're ranking already. Like, those are the things that you should do now. Then I focus on influencer marketing. I really took my time with influencer marketing. I didn't just send products to influencers who had the most views. I took my time to watch all the videos, but most especially, I took more time to read the comments that the viewers were leaving under the videos. Sometimes you'll see a video that has like 100,000 views and it only has 100 comments. That's like 1% engagement. That's really, really bad. But if, for example, I see a YouTuber that has 500 subscribers, but she's getting 100 comments, it means that she has a highly engaged audience. And you also have to like keep in mind what they're commenting, because some of these influencers, they come together in what you call engagement pods. So they'll be in like a group chat with maybe like 50 of them. And as soon as they post, they'll tell each other, oh, leave a comment on my video, leave a comment on my post. So don't just look at the number, actually read the comments. So when you see comments, when people are like, oh, I bought this because of you, or, oh, I remember you recommended this, I'm loving it, I've been using this, blah, blah, blah. Those are the kind of people that you want to work with, because even if they're small, they have high influence with the number of people that they work with. I have an influencer who only has 20,000 YouTube subscribers, but she's gotten me over 300 monthly paying subscribers, which is insane. Like, there's nobody else I work with her. Then the person under her probably only referred me like 56 subscribers, but I really took my time to go over her comments and things like that to make sure that I was, at the end of the day, like, even if you're giving them these products, you're still gifting them your hard work. You're paying for the postage, you're paying for the product, you're paying for it's your time that you're giving them. And I find that micro influencers are definitely easier to work with because they're still building their audience and you're building your business. So you're kind of in the same, it's like it's a horizontal, elevation. If you're trying to go vertical, you're working with someone who's all the way up here and you're just starting, they're going to talk to you like you're doing them a favor, right? So you really want to build with people who are on the same level as you and you grow with them. So those are the 3 things that I focused on when I built my business. And then eventually I moved into Facebook ads, I moved into Google ads, I moved into TikTok ads, I moved into Snapchat ads, but only that, like, doing since Q4, when I can put like a sizable budget away every month. And one other thing that I learned the hard way is to really give yourself a monthly budget for testing. I call it my budget for failure. So every month, whether it's $100 or $1,000, put it aside to test new things. And that's automatically a write-off. Like, don't think about it as I'm going to make money off of it, because you're using it to test. So last month I started testing Google ads and I put $2,000 in there and it didn't work out. But I already had in mind that, like, whatever happens to this money, it's just a test. So now I know going forward that, Google ads is not something I'm going to go through. I tried Snapchat ads. I also put $2,000 in there in the summer. And that actually took off for me, and that worked. So you kind of have to position your business and remember that you have to fail fast and fail forward, because failing is the only way that you're gonna get to the success is faster. Like, I would rather make all my mistakes in my first year and in my third year I'm just booming, rather than like be too scared of making mistakes in like the first or second year, and in the third year I'm still struggling, I'm still in the same spot. So that's kind of what I want to cover. I don't know if you want me to keep talking, or if you have any specific questions about what I just said.
So, I mean, we would love to hear you talk. I love to hear you talk, Billy. You'll have to come back another time. And I know you're going into your season, but maybe, even in the new year, we'd love to have you back. If anyone has any questions, maybe because Billy does have to leave in 3 minutes, maybe you can ask Billy your questions now. Please put it in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. And so one quick question for you, Billy. I'm always inspired by what you have to say. Your approach is so very practical. What were some of the successes you found? Like, how soon did you advertise, and how did you know exactly what to do in your first ads?
Well, in my first ads,
he's asking how do we.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, I'll put my business information right after, but in my first ads, I actually focus on retargeting. So this is something that I didn't do for the first 2 years, and I probably lost like a ton of money, because imagine, like, just think about how many times you've gone on a website and you got a call or you got a text and you got distracted, and then you just forgot to shop and you actually wanted to buy that thing, right? So for the first 2 years, I didn't do any retargeting ads. So I always tell people, even if it's $10 a day, put it in Facebook retargeting. Actually, on your first day of your business, the first thing you need to do is make sure your pixel is on your website. So your Facebook pixel, you can find it in Facebook Ads Manager. And gradually, as people are going on your website, it's collecting all their information. Like, Facebook is so precise and so scary, to the point that, like, I have an application on my website where if you're in your Facebook Messenger talking about Try Beauty Box, we crawl that word and we'll show you an ad for it like 30 minutes later or whatever. So have that pixel on your website immediately when you launch. Even if you're not going to start running ads, just have it. It's collecting data, right? That way it's more and more precise about the kind of people that want to shop from you. When you're eventually ready to start ads, the first ad you should run, as I said, is retargeting ads. I've gone on so many websites and I got distracted. Like, I'm such a scatterbrain. I got distracted and I just forgot, and I forgot for like a week. And then I'm like, oh my God, I totally wanted to buy this. But because there was no retargeting, if they had shown me an ad like 30 minutes later or the day after, I would have totally bought it. So that's the first ad you should have. The second ad that you should have is for lookalike audiences. So like I said, when you have that pixel on your website, it's collecting data of customers who are your most likely to convert. Then on Facebook, you can create something called lookalike audiences. So Facebook will gather all the data points from those people that were on your website, and you tell Facebook, with this budget that I have, go on your, what is it, like 2 billion people that you have on Facebook and look for people that are exactly like those people and show them my ad, because you know that those people are more than willing to buy from you, right? So one thing I like to do on Facebook, I actually upload my list of customers who have purchased from me, and I tell Facebook to create lookalike audiences for it. So Facebook looks for exactly those people who have the same shopping patterns, who have the same browsing patterns, who have the same interest, and it shows them my ads. And those are the ads that I get the highest return on investment for. So after you've kicked off those 2 ads, then you go into cold prospecting. So cold prospecting is like going to Winners and you're just going to walk, or like going to LCBO and just like, oh, I want to look for a new wine today, like just because. So cold prospecting, you're telling Facebook, hey, show my ads to people who are interested in beauty. And if they bite, they bite. If they don't, you know, it's whatever. So that is, lookalike audiences is actually the most expensive ads to convert, because it makes sense for Facebook to charge you more for that, because you're telling Facebook, it's kind of like you're cheating. You're telling Facebook, hey, I know which customers are buying from me. Now I want you to look for those exact customers, and they'll most likely convert. So Facebook will charge you more for it, but it's worth it as long as you factor in your profit margins. And then second most expensive is obviously cold prospecting, because you're just throwing your ads in the wild. For me, I target my competitors. I target beauty subscription boxes, and I also target magazines or publications that talk about subscription boxes. So those are the 3. So at least it's narrowed into people who like subscription boxes, but it's not narrowed into someone who's already been on my website and who's bought from me. Like, it's not that unique, right? So, you know, Facebook ads, like I've spent thousands of dollars on Facebook courses. Happy to share what I can. But again, like I spent like 6 months finishing a course that was like $1,500. And it's just like a progressive learning. You know, you always have to be ready to learn. And like for me, I dedicate my Sundays to learning. Like every single Sunday, one thing you're going to always catch me doing is spending at least 4 to 5 hours just learning new things, whether that's industry trends, whether that's just what's on the news in my industry, you know, marketing techniques, sales techniques. One thing I like to do, what you should do as well, is I created a separate email, and I actually subscribe to all of my competitors and people in my industry's email blast. So it's like, I don't have the money to pay someone to do my email marketing, but they do. So what I do is I take inspiration from their email titles. I take inspirations from their headlines, and I, you know, model that into my brand. And with that, I have months and months of email headlines. I have months and months of email subject lines to help my business. So there's so many little strategies that you can use, so many different tools, but you do that by staying on the game and by learning. Facebook groups are like such a gold mine, and I feel like people don't take advantage of Facebook groups. Like all I do every night, well, apart from Instagram or TikTok, is literally like the only reason I'm on Facebook is for my ads and Facebook groups. I be in those Facebook groups. Anything I need to learn, I just put in the word affiliate marketing, influencer marketing, sales strategy, Facebook ads, and I just read people's posts and people's comments, because you'll be shocked how many people are out there wanting to share their information, and for free. You know, before asking anybody anything, this is one thing I learned through my mentor. Before asking anyone anything, I do all of my research first, and then when I have specific questions is when I approach the professionals. So they're more willing to help me, because they're like, oh wait, this girl has done her research, she's willing to put in the work. So you know what, all she needs is this little boost. I'm willing to help her. When people come in my DMs, are like, hey, how do I start a business? I can borderline block you, because like, why are you wasting my time? Like, what do you mean how do I register my business? Google.com. Google is free. Like, people don't talk about Google. Google is literally free. I wish I never spent all this money. Well, my parents paid. I wish I never paid for university, because everything I learned at school, I could have learned it on Google. But Yeah, so the Facebook groups that I'm in, I'm seeing some questions, but I just want to go through this as fast as possible. Facebook groups I'm in is, if you're on Shopify, there's an amazing Facebook group. It has like 120,000 people on there. Imagine the gems of information in there. It's called Shopify Entrepreneurs. That simple. Another group that's mainly Black entrepreneurs is called Brand Build Launch by Arsha Jones. I also, for my ads, well, I got into the group before it's paid. Now it's a paid group. It's called Facebook Ad Creative. So people in there share very interesting ads that they think convert well. So you can actually use those sample conversions to shoot your own ads. I'm in, there's just so many. Just search any word in like the group section of Facebook, and like you'll find like a plethora of groups for that information. And yes, stay subscribed to industry leaders. For me, like I'm subscribed to Subscription Box Association. I read all of their emails. Shopify sends gems for e-commerce. They literally have free blogs. Another thing I want to add is that if you're using apps on your website or to build your business, reach out to the support team of the apps that you use and tell them to put you on the beta testing list of the apps. So before I started SMS marketing, I told the app that I wanted to use, I told them to put me on the beta testing app. So when they want to roll out new features, they pick you, or they do a random draw of a couple people to give free months of usage to, while you test the app, you test the program with your website, and you give them feedback. So I was able to get 6 months of email marketing, both the text messages I was sending and the monthly fee. And like, I think that saved me probably like $3,000, just like putting myself out there and asking. So don't be afraid to ask for things. These people are here for you. Again, you pay them on a monthly basis, demand everything you want from them. I'm like the Karen in like Shopify. I ask for everything. I ask for all the opportunities. You should, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. If they say no, oh, cool. Like, it's just not available. That doesn't mean that like they don't like you. It's nothing personal. So those are just like the quick gems I wanted to share. But yeah, now I'm gonna look through the questions quickly and I'm gonna run.
I'm gonna get a t-shirt made of that. A closed mouth doesn't get fed. I love it. I sort of just was typing comments and quotes, but someone did ask very early. I'll just quick thing. I'd like, we must always ask in the game. There was a question earlier on. Hey guys, don't be shy. If Billy has like 1 minute, she's actually over time. Thanks a lot, Billy, for staying. We really appreciate it. If you could just, there was a question, I just can't find it because I was just busy typing up all these notes in the box for you guys. So if you could, if you got,
yeah, I can't see any question as well. So
how did you build a team if you have one? It's just me and one other person. So you can totally do things yourself. I'm definitely actually, I lie. I have a virtual assistant who does like all of my admin work. I have someone who does customer service. But when I say just me, like business operations, it's just me. So I have customer service. So one thing I took advantage of early in my business is virtual assistants. You can find quality you can find quality experience overseas. So I use a company actually based in Canada, and they find and train virtual assistants in the Philippines. So you're paying them the minimum wage there, which at the time was $6.50. That's what I paid an hour for my customer service way back then. Obviously, the business has grown and the person that I work with is really, really good. And I ended up matching like our minimum wage to what she earns there. So obviously she's making like double because ours is like $15. But you can get really good work overseas. So look into Philippines and the VAs, virtual assistants in the Philippines. So that can help you with your customer service portion without it being too expensive. So what I did is that I did a lot of canned responses. So I just sat down one weekend, thought about all the questions that people could ask me. And obviously, as customers are asking you questions, you create canned responses for that. By the time you know, by the time you get through a couple months, you would have covered all the questions a customer can ask you. And she has the exact responses for that. And she copy pastes it and customizes it according to like what the customer is asking. So that's what I did for customer service. I was packing all of my orders for my first year. And after that, I moved into a fulfillment center. So I pay them to pack each order, which takes away all of the packing headaches that I need to do. That I think I outsourced that as soon as I reached like 300 orders a month. Like I'm just not good at logistics. It's really confusing and it's time consuming. So I just decided to outsource that. Marketing I do myself. I learned Facebook ads myself. Email marketing I do myself. So take advantage of scheduling. You know, you don't have to be on the ball all the time. I schedule most of my emails every Sunday ahead of time for the week, all my promotions. Every 30th or 31st of the month, I write down all the sales I want to do for the month, and then I do my email campaign. So working ahead of time is actually obviously really good for you. So that's like my team per se.
Great.
Someone also asked how you went around finding a mentor. I know we've like gone over time, but
yeah, I don't believe in going out to find a mentor. I think that it's kind of like a relationship, you find each other. So my most amazing mentors, I met them at networking events, or my like top mentor, I met him at a bar. We like bumped into each other and we started talking, and then like he bought me a beer. We're just like talking, and then he's like, whoa, you're such like a bright, I don't want to toot my own horn, you know, and he's like, I would love to, like, you know, whatever you need, like message me. And from there we built our relationship. But again, like same way with opportunities, you have to put yourself out there for people of higher ranks to be able to meet you. And to do that, you also have to be at a certain level. You know, if he didn't see, you know, work ethic, if he didn't see ambition in me, or whatever promise that he sees that I don't even see in myself, he wouldn't sacrifice his time to spend hours with me. And my mentor is actually like an ecom like genius. He'll literally sit with me on Zoom for like 2 hours and do my whole marketing, and he's like, cool, just do it. So put yourself out there. For me, like sometimes I get approach for mentorship, but the people I actually mentor are people that I've met in real life, and I've found a liking in them, and I truly want them to succeed. So that's why I say it's more of like an organic kind of thing than like, hey, can you mentor me? At least that's how I see it. Some people are open for mentorship, but I prefer quality over quantity. Like I know that if I have an emotional attachment to you, I will do all that I can for you, versus, oh, let me just give you 30 minutes of my time, and it ends at the 30 minutes because that's all I have, and I have 15 other mentors behind me. So that's what I think. Where can we find Facebook ad classes? I use my good friend, I'm going to plug him in. I should get a referral for this. Abu Fofana, he's amazing. Fofana, I wrote his name there. So he is the person who I took the marketing course from. If you have like a couple friends, it's $1,500 US. It's a lot. I don't know how his logging is, and he's probably going to kill me for saying this, but you know, you gotta hustle if you can't do it. If you have a couple friends, let's say like 3 friends, you all put like $500 each, take the course together under like one login. So that's what I would advise. Like I did that with my friend, because obviously 1,500 is a lot of money, but it's like, it's one of the best courses out there. Facebook does have a free course called Facebook Blueprint, but it doesn't necessarily go as in depth, but it will definitely teach you the very basics. And of course, YouTube University, there's people who do hour-long YouTube videos for free without asking for anything, and it'll teach you everything that you need to know. Honestly, like there's just so much information out there. I'm gonna take 2 more questions. It's funny, there was one question at the beginning that I saw. Can we connect? I'm in the beauty business too, but I'm struggling. Sure, you can DM me on Instagram. And then there was also, where do we find your business? It's www.tribebeautybox.com and at Tribe Beauty Box. Cool. So I also put my business information on there for you guys. So
awesome. you so much, Billy. This has been very, very impactful.
welcome.
We're literally like counting down. The entire session today has been like a blast. So thank you. I know the women on here, all 35 of us have been very blessed by all the information that you shared. Hopefully we can get you again sometime soon, because I know this is really. And so apologies for having to keep you over time, because I know you had to leave at 8. So we're just going to let you, go now. But if we have any other question, we can always like email you, and of course, any comments. And then you already have your contact here. So I know we would reach out to you with anything. Right, you guys, as many of us, I'm into beauty as well. So you guys should be ready to get your beauty boxes and subscriptions this month.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, have a great evening, everyone. Take care and good luck with your businesses. Bye.
Thank you so much, Lily. Take care. Bye-bye.